So thank you for joining us for BBFA support session number 8. This month we are going to look at safeguarding compliance and DBS checks. Part of this is to support clubs around what requirements are in place, both at a club and league official stage and also as a coach or manager of an individual team. It's something that has led to some compliance issues over the course of the season, which has led to action being taken against clubs and teams, which has then had some knock-on impacts around participation in football. So we wanted to kind of tackle that, make sure that everybody's aware of what the requirements are and what the procedures are for making sure that the right checks are done in a timely manner and that everything is in place, particularly as we begin to look ahead to the start of the 2020-21 affiliation season, which will hopefully be up and running in the next couple of months. So the session this evening, it follows very much the same format as previous months. We're going to look a little bit around what the requirements and what the regulations are. So we're going to look at youth club and league officers, coaches in youth football, coaches in adult football. Also then going to take a little bit of a look around the non-compliance process. So if somebody within your organisation no longer meets the requirements or their DBS expires halfway through the season. And then we're going to do a little bit of a practical demonstration around the DBS application process. So we're going to look at where you can see your qualifications in the whole game system, both as an individual and as a club or a league officer. And then we're going to look at the integration of DBS checks into whole game, the benefits of doing that and what that process looks like and where it's slightly different to what you may be used to. As with previous sessions, hoping this won't last any more than an hour. And we should be done hopefully by about 8 o'clock this evening. So first up, as I said, we're going to look around some of that compliance and what's required for people in different roles with different responsibilities in grassroots football. First up, I want to look at youth club and youth league officers. So these are requirements that are mandatory for youth clubs and youth leagues, but would then also fall under, or we would this term as best practice then for adult clubs and leagues. First of all, you're looking at the senior officers of the club who are, for our intents and purposes and for that definition of the senior officer, the chair, the secretary and the treasurer. I'll come on to the welfare officer in a second. Now the basic requirement for individual holding one of those roles is that they complete the online safeguarding for committee members course. This is something that the FA brought in 3 years ago. Initially, it had a 3-year renewal time limit on it. So a few months ago, we may have been expecting that you would have to retake that course in the lead up to next season. That qualification has now been extended to last for 4 years. So you've got another season on that before you need to come through and renew your qualification on that. For those of you who haven't taken it, it's straightforward. It's a 40-minute online workshop that just tries to kind of shape your thinking as a committee member and what kind of impact your decisions at a club level may impact individual players and children in their enjoyment or their involvement in football. It is a really useful course. We do really encourage all committee members actually within a club or a league to take it, but it is mandatory for a chair, the secretary and the treasurer. So if when you come for affiliation next season and one of those 3 individuals does not have this course, we won't be able to approve the club's affiliation until that is in place. The welfare officer then is still one of the senior officers that has additional responsibilities when it comes to youth football and therefore requires additional qualifications in order for us to approve them in that role. So in addition then to that online safeguarding for committee members course, they are also required to have taken a safeguarding children workshop and then the FA's welfare officers workshop, which is kind of really tackles what it takes to manage welfare and safeguarding within a club or within a league organisation and how almost to incorporate that long-term strategic planning to make sure that you've always got the best interest of young players and children at the forefront of the club's operations and you're able to respond and react to anything which may come up over the course of the season. The welfare officer is then also required to hold a current DBS certificate. I'll come on and explain exactly what that means in a couple of moments. So as I said, it is mandatory for all youth clubs and youth leagues. These qualifications must be allocated against an individual's fan number in order for the club affiliation or the league sanction to be approved. And that's really where the integration of the DBS process and whole game is going to have some massive benefits, because it means that we know that DBS certificates, which have been one of the biggest causes of duplicate fans, will automatically be allocated against the correct record. If you do run into issues that actually those qualifications are spread across 2 or 3 different fan numbers and individual records, then please contact us at the office, because we will be able to merge those so they all fall under one record, which will be the record that's used for the individual in that role going forward, and we'll make sure that everything is compliant and in place and we're able to approve that affiliation. These requirements do also then apply to any club with a power chair team. The reason for that is that the minimum age for a player to play in power chair football is actually 12 years old. So therefore, there's a much higher probability of children being active within the club, even if all other teams in that organisation are deemed to be in adult football. If they do have a power chair team, you would be expected to have these in place. Moving on then to youth team coaches, first of all. So every coach assigned to a youth team must hold what we term to be a valid, in-date and FA-approved DBS. That obviously covers a lot of different things, but the real definition of what constitutes a valid DBS for us is that it's been issued within the past 3 years through GB Group, who are the FA's verification and disclosure partner. So obviously there isn't any kind of content on there, and that DBS has been added to that individual's fan. I'll kind of go through what that DBS process looks like and do the practical demonstration later on. But that is the minimum requirement, and this is where we have had some issues, is around that 3-year cut-off point expiring midway through a season, which leads to a non-compliance issue over the course of the football year. So without a valid DBS at the beginning of the season, a team's affiliation will be rejected, so won't be allowed through. If it then drops off midway through a season, you could actually face that team's affiliation being suspended. Moving on to adult football then. From the start of the 2020 to the 21 season, next season, any coach of an adult team which has 16 or 17-year-old players registered to it must also hold a DBS. This is one of the big new changes that's coming in for the coming season. And we've been working with leagues over the last couple of months to make sure that we're getting steps in place to make sure all the teams are actually going to be compliant for the start of the new season. So we've identified coaches who are likely to be impacted already, and we've already contacted those clubs and leagues to make sure they are aware that we think they're going to be impacted by this. So the general rule, what we're saying is that if you've had under 18s this season and are intending to continue to register under 18s next season, or indeed recruit new under 18 players, and you don't currently hold a DBS, you will need to contact us at the County FA or through your league to get more information on how to get that DBS issued. We're in a fortunate position that, having crunched some of the numbers, it does look like the majority of coaches of adult teams with under 18 players that don't currently hold a DBS are actually part of larger clubs which have youth sections, and therefore they already have a club welfare officer who should be able to help them through this process as well. The bigger risk for us, or the ones who are going to need a bit more support, are those adult-only clubs who may not have a welfare officer in place, in which case we will work with you to make sure you get that DBS issued ahead of the start of the new season. What we don't want to do, obviously, is have this impact participation and impact that, particularly that transition between under 16 football, under 17, under 18, and into open age football. There's obviously a lot of talented 16 and 17-year-olds out there who want to have that opportunity playing open-aged men's football or women's football. And what we don't want to do is deprive them that opportunity because their adult team coach doesn't have a DBS. I don't think it is too much of an inconvenience, and it's certainly not a massive expense to go through this process. It just needs a little bit of work with the county FA now, and we'll get everything in place, like I said, ahead of the new season. So I've mentioned a couple of times consequences of non-compliance mid-season. So just to try and clear that up and take you through what that looks like. So if a qualification expires or a new individual is appointed into a role without any of the required qualifications, the club or league is required to take appropriate action within 21 days of notification from us, or the affiliation of that relevant team, club or league will be temporarily suspended until compliance is restored. Lots of text on that slide, but I'm going to try and break that down slightly. So a lot of clubs will know that we go through an annual affiliation process with the FA. So every summer, a club has to re-affiliate and declare all of the teams that you are intending to enter into competitions for the following season. That gives us a little bit of a natural cycle and a natural point to check and challenge the data and to refresh it so that we know that the information that we're working off actually is up to date and is relevant. Part of that means that if a team goes to affiliate with a non-compliant coach, they won't actually be able to complete that affiliation process until they have a compliant individual in the role. Harder for us to then monitor when that drops off over the course of the season. Effectively, if you're submitting your affiliation on the 1st of August and you've got a compliant coach and their DBS expires on the 2nd of August, the affiliation may well have been approved on the 1st, but you will become non-compliant on the 2nd. So it becomes a rolling compliance issue. So what happens from a county FA point of view is that we now receive a daily list from the FA, which gives us details of all non-compliant teams within the county, whether it is because one of their coaches' DBSs has expired or that they no longer have a coach or a manager assigned to them. Our aim is then to notify the club or the league that very same day, to notify them of the non-compliance and kind of work with them through that 21-day period to make sure that they take the relevant steps they need to ensure that team remains compliant. If, however, after 21 days since they were contacted from us, they haven't taken the necessary steps to resolve that matter, we have the power through the FA to actually suspend that team's affiliation. It does happen. Thankfully, it's not too common. We've probably suspended about 20 teams over the course of this season so far. We will contact the club, the welfare officer, and also the league, and instruct the league that they have to withhold fixtures for that team until the matter is sorted. So it is something that does can have serious ramifications if a club doesn't manage to stay on top of their coach qualifications in particular. What I'm going to do is kind of break down what that non-compliance looks like for the two major categories here, which are for coaches, if they become non-compliant, and then if, more importantly, perhaps if a welfare officer becomes non-compliant mid-season, because that has the impact or potential impact then of seeing an entire club's affiliation suspended. But first of all, coach non-compliance. So a very simple flowchart here, just to kind of break down what those steps are and what the potential outcomes are. As I said, the first stage is that team official will appear on the county FA non-compliance list. So we'll get that first thing in the morning, 8:30 every single day, 7 days a week, and we will then reach out to that club and let them know that that team is no longer compliant. The club's notified, and they're required to submit a DBS application and appoint a compliant coach to that team, or replace the coach completely with a compliant individual within 21 days. If the DBS is submitted and there's a compliant coach appointed to that team, then the team remains compliant. No action is taken, but we will continue to monitor that DBS application to make sure that it does come through without any issues. Alternative option, as I said, is that actually the non-compliant coach is stood down from that team completely and compliant coach is put in their place. Again, team is therefore compliant, no further actions taken by the county FA. On the flip side of that, club fails to take action within that 21 days, team affiliation is suspended. So a couple of notes then just around that process. Where an individual team has multiple coaches, every coach must still hold a valid DBS issued within the past 3 years. However, the benefit of that is that if you do have multiple coaches assigned to one team, if an individual coach becomes non-compliant, provided you submit that DBS application, that team's affiliation will not be affected. Obviously, that is then dependent on those additional coaches remaining compliant throughout that process. And then while a DBS application is in process, that non-compliant individual must not have unsupervised access to children during that time. Now, I know that in practice, the majority of youth teams will probably have 2 or 3 individuals named against them. And so, as we said, if one coach does drop off that compliant list over the course of the season, all you need to do then is submit the DBS application and no impact will happen to the team. The bigger risk is those teams where there's only one named individual and that one individual drops off the compliance list. In those cases, as I said before, it is a 2-step process. You need to, first of all, submit the DBS application for that individual, but you also need to make sure that there is another compliant coach allocated to that team in order for their affiliation to remain valid. What is potentially a greater risk and a greater concern to us then is if a coach leaves their post mid-season, particularly if it is one of those one-coach teams, and effectively a replacement must then be appointed immediately. What we can't have is, as a county FA, for us to not know who the individual is that is responsible for that team, for both their coaching during the week and managing that team in a match-based scenario. Therefore, if the replacement's not a compliant replacement is not appointed within 7 days, that team's affiliation will be temporarily revoked again until the matter's resolved. What we're tending to do if we do have a coach or a team come onto our list where a coach is stepped down, we'll just reach out straight away, call the club secretary or call the club welfare officer up, and 9 times out of 10 we're actually able to get the correct name added to the team pretty much within 24 hours. But what it does mean, again, is that importance of staying on top of data in whole game and making sure that it continues to reflect the reality of who is actually coaching and managing that team on a day-to-day basis. And I'll kind of talk you through how to do that a little bit later on when we go back into whole game as part of the practical demonstration. So as I said, the other area of concern for us then is if a welfare officer becomes non-compliant over the course of the season. And given the scale of their role within the club and the importance that they have to the whole DBS and compliance process, again, it's something that we have we've got some steps in place to try and manage that non-compliance and work with the club or the league to resolve it. So once again, the first step is that club official or the league official will appear on the FA's non-compliance list, so we will get that notification the morning after they drop off that list. And again, our first step is to contact the club, inform them of the non-compliance, and they're required to either submit a DBS application or appoint a replacement officer within 21 days of that non-compliance happening. What we're not saying with a welfare officer non-compliance is that you have to appoint another welfare officer during that period whilst the DBS is in process. Partly that's because of the additional qualifications and expertise needed to fulfill the role, and partly is because from a mitigation of risk point of view, if someone's in that role, they pose a lower risk than someone that's actually working with children on a day-to-day basis in a coaching capacity. Although as a welfare officer, you have oversight of an organisation and their safeguarding procedures, it's less likely they're actually involved day-to-day with children. So looking at the potential next steps, first up, DBS is submitted within that 21 days, and straight away the club is compliant, and while we'll continue to monitor it throughout, there's no immediate risk to that club's affiliation being suspended. The next option is actually a replacement is nominated by the club, and it could be that the existing welfare officer has actually decided to step down from the club completely. Maybe they've moved away from the area, or for other reasons, they've just had to take a break and step away from the club, and so a replacement's been nominated. Now, this can go then one of two ways. First is that replacement is fully qualified, has all of those workshops, has completed all the workshops that I mentioned at the beginning of the session, in which case, brilliant. The individual's fully compliant, they're fully qualified, the club remains qualified and compliant, and there's no impact to the affiliation. If, however, that individual is missing some of those qualifications, which generally is more likely given the specialist nature of them, particularly the welfare officer workshop, what we can do is issue what we call a county action plan, which is sort of temporary approval or temporary affiliation that gives a provisional approval pending the completion of that course. And I'll come on to explain that in a bit more detail in a minute. This then goes one of two ways. The CAP terms are completed within the timeline required. Again, club compliance, fantastic. If, however, those terms aren't completed within the deadline that's been set, at that stage, the club affiliation will be suspended in its entirety. So this means that every single team within the club will be, we will instruct their league to withhold fixtures, and they will not be allowed to participate until we have someone in place who is, we are confident, has the qualifications and is involved to the required extent as a welfare officer to manage the safeguarding within that club. The final point to note is that obviously if the club fails to take any action within that 21 days, either fails to submit a DBS application for the existing welfare officer or nominate a replacement, again, they violated that compliance requirement, and again, that club affiliation will be suspended at that point. Thankfully, it hasn't had to happen this season. We hope it wouldn't have to happen at any stage, but it is there, and it is something that shows the process that's available to the county FA if we do have some of these serious non-compliance issues. What I should say is that the same principle would apply if a league welfare officer became non-compliant mid-season. And actually, if a league welfare officer, if the league was then unable to identify a replacement or was unable to submit a DBS application within that time frame, then actually that entire league's sanction would be withdrawn. So I've mentioned county action plans. So just to explain that in a bit more detail. So county action plan will be issued where a club or a league has identified an unqualified individual to take on a role, but they can provide evidence that they've registered that individual to attend the relevant courses to gain the missing qualifications. So we then the county action plan is allocated against the club in the whole game system. So it's formalised and agreed by both parties, and we therefore agree a provisional affiliation, which is dependent on the terms of that action plan being completed. Generally, the time frame for that is around 90 days. So we accept that some of these courses, in particular the welfare officer workshop, they're not run every week, so it can take a little while to get to the point that all qualifications are in place. As I said, we've got about 3 months to work with to make sure that everything is put in place. So we will work with the club through that. As I mentioned before, if the terms of that county action plan are then not completed, that club or league's affiliation will be temporarily suspended until those required actions have been completed. One thing I would note with a welfare officer is that the individual that's been nominated, regardless of whether they're missing qualifications for Safeguarding Children workshop or welfare officers workshop, if they don't have a DBS, we can't issue a county action plan. So at a bare minimum, a replacement welfare officer must hold that DBS in order for us to agree to a county action plan. And the same principle would apply if one of those other key officials left their post mid-season. As I mentioned before, requirement is a key official, so secretary, chair, or treasurer, must have that online safeguarding for committee members course. So if the chair leaves midway through the season and a replacement is nominated, technically they're non-compliant if they haven't got that safeguarding for committee members course. But again, we'll offer a county action plan, so 90 days for that to be completed. But that should be a relatively straightforward process. As I said, it's about a 40-minute online workshop, so really should get resolved within 7 days of that non-compliance being identified. From a practical point of view then, The advice is if a welfare officer leaves their post mid-season, is to contact the county FA immediately. What we will do is then we'll work with that club or league to identify a replacement individual who's happy to take on that role, and then help you through that county action plan process. So from a club point of view, it may well be that in the immediate term, you may look to see if there's other clubs in the nearby area who are happy to work with you, and for a welfare officer to kind of fulfill that role for an additional club on a short-term basis to make sure that the welfare of the children is still being safeguarded within that club. That then may buy their time until the end of the season and to identify somebody within your club to take on long-term. Similarly, if it is a league welfare officer that steps down mid-season, we'll work with the league and member clubs within that league to see if there's somebody that can step up in the immediate term. Potentially a club welfare officer would agree to fulfill that role across the league and provide that support and advice and guidance to their counterparts at other clubs whilst the league identifies a longer term replacement for that role. What we cannot do though is we cannot install a member of county FA staff as a club welfare officer or a league welfare officer on a temporary basis. Obviously, a lot of our members of staff here are actively involved in clubs and some do fulfill that role, but that is where they are an active member of that club. They are in and amongst that club on a daily basis, fulfilling that role to the level you would expect a club or a league welfare officer to fulfill. So therefore, a member of staff that, say, lives in Abingdon like myself would not be able to act as a club welfare officer for a team down in Slough. So we do not offer up members of staff as a temporary stopgap to fulfill that role. Ultimately, it's the club or the league's responsibility to find a replacement and make sure that they are taking ownership of the safeguarding and the welfare of the children within that club or league. So that kind of covers the compliance side. Now I'm going to just look through that DBS application process. Appreciate some of this when it comes to the GBG process is going to be well known, particularly for a lot of the welfare officers or the club secretaries on the course. I just wanted to recap it and then also look at what the application process is with the new option to integrate through the whole game system and where the benefits are with that. So DBS applications, as I said at the beginning of the session, must be completed through GB Group to be considered approved for the FA's point of view. Appreciate that means that a lot of people who may well have a DBS through another organisation for their work or for other social commitments or volunteer roles that they hold will be asked to go through and complete another one through a different organisation, but that is actually general industry standard. DBSs tend not to be transferable, so it's unlikely you'll be able to take a GB Group DBS for grassroots football and transfer that immediately across into an education or medical setting. You would probably be asked to reapply through the partner of whatever organisation you've joined. Very much the same with the FA. And part of that is because of that partnership that FA and GBG have for sharing data and for managing the, any referrals or content that comes up on that, those documents. So it must be completed through GB Group, but it can now be initiated in the first instance through the whole game system. There are two major advantages to doing that. The first is ensures the DBS will be issued against the correct fan. Now this is something that again has caused a lot of problems around affiliation season or where a DBS application is submitted mid-season for a coach. If it always used to be that when a DBS is issued, if there's any discrepancy at all between the data that's provided for the DBS application and the data that's already held in the whole game system, it would just create a brand new record for that individual based on the DBS application information. So this may be where coach is known by their middle name, and that's how they're recorded in the whole game system, but obviously a DBS application has to be through their legal name, or maybe where they've moved house mid-season but haven't updated their fan record. That's caused administrative issues, and it causes all qualifications, all records, disciplinary histories, coaching histories, and so forth to be split across multiple records. That then causes delays in affiliation and some of these non-compliance matters. So by initiating a DBS application through whole game, you know that it is going to come back, the DBS certificate is going to come back against the correct fan and avoid any of those issues down the line. The other aspect is it also now allows an affiliation to be approved with a DBS application in progress. If we're able to show that the individual that's linked to a Teams affiliation application has a DBS in process through the whole game system, it allows us to approve that Teams affiliation. You no longer have to wait for it to have gone through the entire DBS process, sent to the FA, uploaded against their fan, and then the county FA notifies or checks to make sure that they can then approve that affiliation. Automates that whole process. So from an administrative point of view, it has massive advantages. At the moment, we're also experiencing some significant delays with Thames Valley Police just due to the workload they've got on. We're seeing some DBS applications being sat with the police for upwards of 60 or 90 days. So again, by making sure you're doing this application through the whole game system, those delays become less critical. And then the only other thing I would say around applications generally is initiated through the club, and the documents are then verified by the club welfare officer. However, if you are a coach of an adult team and you don't have a club welfare officer, the application will need to be submitted through the county FA, and we can again help you out with that process. So DBS applications via whole game. Just want to run you through what that process is, and then I will do a quick demonstration as well, so you can see how easy it is to link link the club with the GBG pin and then initiate an application. So the first stage is that the club welfare officer links the club to GBG account. Every club or organisation will have a PIN number with GBG. That gets entered into whole game and everything is automatically linked through. So it automatically associates any DBS applications to that club. It's a one-time process, so once it's done, you're absolutely fine. However, once you do enter it, every DBS application from that point onwards must go through whole game. The welfare officer then adds the relevant coach as a DBS applicant, again through the whole game system, and that individual then initiates their application through whole game. They'll have to log on to the whole game system themselves and make sure that all of their personal data is accurate and up to date, and then initiate their DBS application through whole game. That then takes them through to the GBG portal, where it becomes business as usual, really. It's the same process it's always been, where they select the relevant documentation for verification. The CWO verifies the documents, individual pays the application. So again, the one benefit of this is also you can then see the progress of an application can be checked by the applicant and the club welfare officers through the whole game system. So rather than having to check whole game and GBG to see the difference, what stage an application's at, you can do everything through one portal. So again, that integration is hopefully cutting down on some of the admin and the workload for welfare officers in the short and the long term. Once again, as I mentioned, if it is an adult team coach, it will have to be done through the county FA if you don't have a club welfare officer. So contact us, we'll provide you with our PIN to start that process, and we'll handle the verification of documents. Also in this case, if the applicant is a welfare officer, that a member of county FA staff would have to verify the documents for you. I mentioned earlier that it's not a particularly big expense. It is £10 for a DBS applicant for a volunteer or somebody in a voluntary role. When you look at that, it's £10 every 3 years. So although there may be a little bit of a process to go through at this stage, particularly for new applicants who are coaching adult sides, so once every 3 year process, £10. It's not something that we feel should inhibit you from recruiting under 18s in your adult club as you have done before. Conscious I rattled through that slightly, so what I'm hoping to do now is an online demonstration, logging into whole game through our County FA demonstration club so that you can then see what that actually looks like in reality. Right. First up, if you haven't logged into WholeGame for a couple of days, welcome to the new WholeGame system. The functionality is still the same, but they've just had a slight redesign of the login page and the My Account, and I'll take you through that as well. The one significant change on this, it's been promoted since the turn of the year that when logging into WholeGame now, you have to log in using your email address and not your FAN number. So every FAN that's active and is being regularly used should have an email address associated with it, or you will have been contacted by the FA in the last month or so, prompting you to associate an email address with it. But when you go to log in from now on, it's email address and not FAN. This is where I hope everything is running up to speed. So you log into WholeGame. Has gone slower than anticipated. Bear with me 1 second while I just try and see if I can get this to sort itself out. We weren't told that there would be any downtime this evening, so I just want to make sure. There we go. It is back up and running. Okay. So although that login page has changed, you come back through into WholeGame, you should see your usual dashboard as you would do normally. What I want to do is show a couple of bits of functionality in addition to the DBS process, but whilst that is fresh in the memories, I want to come on to that first. So you come onto your club dashboard, and to link it, you just go through the safeguarding tab on the left-hand side, and you'll see it now gives two options, club safeguarding and DBS applications across the top. From this main club safeguarding tab, you'll see anybody that has a club role, you'll be able to see their current qualifications. So anything that's in black will show that's not found, and is something that you may need to consider, depending on the role, getting in place for that individual. To link the club, as I said, it's a one-time process. You click through to DBS Applications over here and enter the correct PIN. Click Update, and it now has linked your club to your GBG organizational PIN. You'll also now be able to see DBS applications of individuals within your club through this tab. You'll see that I have one here, which was for DBS withdrawn. That's when I was playing around with it earlier on in the week, just to make sure that everything was working as it should. To add one of your club officials to a DBS application, you come through here, enter their details, so first name, surname, date of birth, postcode, search for them, it'll pull them up, and you'll be able to just add them as an official as a DBS applicant. Can't do it for myself because I've already been added, but I'll now show you what then happens from the coach's point of view. So as I said, that's a one-time process for the club, just to cover this off. One-time process to add the organizational PIN, and then once every 3 years, you'll just have to go in, fill out each individual, and add them as a DBS applicant. So as an individual now, if I come to my personal home tab, which takes me to my dashboard, my account, personal invoices, quality, diversity, and so forth, there is now a tab down at this bottom, which is for my DBS. Click through on this, and it tells me that there is an option now for DBS renewal. It will ask you to select which club you wish to submit a DBS through. So if an individual is coaching across multiple clubs and has been added to that DBS applicant role by multiple clubs, there'll be more than one name that will drop down on this, and they need to select the club that they want to put the application through. In this case, it's Berks and Bucks office. So I click select, and it takes you through to confirm that the application has been started. You'll then receive an email which will ask you to log into GBG portal, where you will be able to select the documents that you want verified in the same process as has been in place for a few years now. Select the documents you want verified, and then you pick up that same process that everybody is used to. So hopefully that shows from an initial setup point of view, actually it's a really easy process to integrate GBG into whole game. Mentioned before those benefits, and we do really encourage all the clubs to go down the integration process. I appreciate the one thing it does is it gives an additional step to the welfare officer of allocating that role to an individual coach, and for that coach of logging into whole game system to initiate the DBS check. However, I think when you look at the longer term benefits for it around the allowing club affiliations to go through with a DBS application in process, and being able to monitor everything in one place, I really do think that it has a lot of benefits for clubs, and also then when it comes down to the DBS being issued, you know it's going to go against the correct record. If you do want any more information on that, please feel free to reach out to myself or Beryl, our county safeguarding manager, or Spencer, who's our compliance officer, and we're happy to kind of walk you through that process and provide you with a bit more information. We've got resource documents which we can send out which take you through the process from a welfare officer's point of view and then from the coach's point of view. The other two things I wanted to show whilst I'm in whole game is around being able to confirm or check qualifications of coaches and update them throughout the course of the season. I mentioned earlier the importance of making sure that the officials listed against teams are current and correct and updated during the season to make sure they reflect the correct data. You can always see the status of qualifications through the team officials tab in whole game. You just need to click the qualification report and it will download a spreadsheet for you to show the expiration date of all qualifications across every team within the club. And those will then be RAG rated to show which ones are non-compliant and which ones are due to expire over the course of the current season. And we really recommend the welfare officers monitor this probably on at least a monthly basis and create that as part of a monthly action plan, that you know who's going to expire in the next 1 to 3 months, and you've got the DBS applications in process for them. If you're able to stay on top of them, even with delays at Thames Valley Police and through some of the disclosure services, it means you shouldn't hit that non-compliance list and you shouldn't get to that point where the affiliation may be threatened through non-compliance. The other thing I just wanted to demonstrate whilst we're in here was around as an individual where you can check your own qualifications, because this has changed in the course of the last week. As the FA's kind of revamped some of their account displays. So you see down the left-hand side here, one of the tabs is My Account, and this takes you through to your personal records and all the information that's available to a county FA that is based on your FAN, your FA number. So it takes you through to a new page, hopefully when it loads, which will look slightly different stylistically to other pages, and it's just part of a rebranding or a revamping that they're doing. So in the initial instance, you'll land on your personal details, your key details here, so your date of birth, your contact details, other details may be available, and then any linked accounts if you have a child that plays for a team somewhere and you're listed as their point of contact or their parent or guardian. Then also has your memberships if you're a member of England Supporters Club, with the Lionesses Club or Travel Club. Across the top here then are some of the key aspects you'll want to be able to monitor from an individual basis. So I come up across the top to safeguarding. This now shows, gives me the access to all of my current safeguarding qualifications. So I can see that my safeguarding for committee members, that's now been updated to show the 4-year cycle. So I don't have to retake that for another 12 months. Shows me the date of my welfare officer workshop and my safeguarding training. And if I had a DBS, which I don't for my role, but if I did have a DBS, it would show me the award date and the expiry date across the top here. You can also access your other online or in-person workshops you've attended. So for coaches in particular, you can see the status of any level 1 coaching qualifications and then any safeguarding qualifications. One thing just to draw your attention to here, because obviously it shows that my Safeguarding Children workshop expired beginning of February. However, that is recorded separately to online recertification. So they do break those down into 2 separate things, that your face-to-face workshop will show as expired, However, you will still be compliant from a recertification point of view if you've completed that online course. So that takes you through the changes to my account and then the whole game system and the integration process. Just to close off then, as always, we try and close these sessions with a little bit of practical advice and guidance that we can to clubs. And really, when it comes down to this, I think there's only two key bits of practical advice we can issue, really. First is to check the qualifications regularly, as I said, at least once a month, so that you're on top of any that are going to be expiring and need to get renewed. And the second one is to seriously consider succession planning, particularly for the role of welfare officer. It is a very specialized role. It is a role which is quite time consuming, and it's a crucial role, but it is crucial to the sustainability and, as I said, the management of a grassroots youth football club. From our point of view, they're one of our key contacts that we work with on a daily basis, trying to support and make sure they're able and equipped to tackle any concerns or any incidents that are reported to them. However, the flip side of that is that if somebody then steps down from that post, it's a huge knowledge gap that suddenly it exposes itself within the club. To really put some thought towards succession planning for those kinds of roles. It means that if a welfare officer steps down mid-season, you've got somebody in place who's already got all of the qualifications and is already ready to step up to that role. If you're a large club, and really I'd say a club that has more than probably 10 or 12 teams, should really consider having assistant welfare officers anyway, just to be able to provide that level of support across all the different teams within your club. We've got some clubs within the county that are upwards of 40, 50 or 60 teams. And really you would be expecting them to have 3 or 4 individuals in place who are able to support the coaches, support the parents, and most importantly, support the children across that number of teams. If you do need additional support, we've got some great pages on our website to help you out with that. Our safeguarding section provides a lot of advice, a lot of training, and resource documents. That's available on our website. If you go to any of the tabs along the top and hover over them, it will give you a link immediately to safeguarding and welfare. The other one is if you are applying for DBS and it does have to be verified by a member of County FA, you can find information around verification sessions all across the county through the website as well. Finally, if you want to go back and have a look at any of the previous sessions we've done, you can find that information on our website. Go through the club management or clubs and leagues tab to club management and BBFA support, and you'll find all of the previous sections or sessions available to watch again online. This ties in quite nicely, I think, with some of the information around volunteer recruitment and management and handling internal complaints and investigations. Those are two aspects which, again, welfare officers are very heavily involved in. So if you do have someone that's coming on board in that role, we'd actually recommend they spend the time to go through those sessions just to get an understanding of where their role fits and some of the key things they're going to have to face in that job. And if they do need support, we are going to tackle safeguarding again next month, looking at some of the recommended internal safeguarding structures, kind of from a strategic point of view, how to set up the club to make sure that you have everything in place, and from a practical point of view, what a welfare officer should be considering and looking for as part of that club management role. What it won't be is a replacement for attending a safeguarding children workshop or a welfare officers workshop. This is just trying to provide a bit of practical advice for how you may want to structure the club and make sure that you can tackle anything that comes up. So that will be on Wednesday, the 8th of April. That's Easter weekend, which is why it is going to be on a Wednesday and not a Thursday night. And if there is anything in particular you'd like covered, or you've got any recommendations or suggestions, then please feel free to contact me. My email address is on the screen at the moment, or you can tweet us at BerksFA with the hashtag DBFA support. That concludes the session for this evening. If anybody wants to put any questions in the chat, more than happy to stick around for a few more moments and try and answer anything you want to throw at me. Beyond that, I hope you have a lovely evening. I hope that you are not adversely affected by all of the pandemic and some of the issues we're facing with coronavirus. If you do have any questions around how best to respond to anything that may come up within the club, if there's a player or a family member that is being impacted or has been asked to self-isolate, please feel free to contact us. The best advice will probably still be to look at the government's website and the advisories that they are putting out through the NHS. But if you just want to bounce some ideas off us, please feel free to give us a call and we'll see what we can do to help out. Thank you very much.